Welcome to Success Mentorship class number 183. Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it? So many of you joined us on Instagram, on Facebook, and our special Success Mentorship group on Zoom, where we'll have a great discussion after we complete our talk today. Our topic is coming out of the pandemic. This is a profound topic, and you might say a very timely topic. And it's a topic that we've been really pondering for quite some time. As you know, all of our topics, all of our information, all of our classes are based on our book, The 12 Universal Laws of Success. And our book is a recipe book for success. You know, if you want to make a cake and you want it to be consistent each time, you go to a recipe book and you follow the recipe. Well, the 12 Universal Laws of Success, the Super Achiever Edition, is indeed your recipe for success. And so today, and of course, it's available on Amazon. It's available on all the digital websites. It's available on our own website, www.herbertharris.com. I love to open with a quote, and this morning I'm open with a quote from Oprah Winfrey. And Oprah said that, "I trust that everything happens for a reason, even when we are not wise enough to see it. I trust that everything happens for a reason, even when we are not wise enough to see it." That's a profound thought, folks, especially at this point in time and space. So as we prepare for our class, let us do our meditation to prepare our minds to receive the message and receive the information. Let's close your outer eyes, open your inner eyes, and take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it out slowly. Take a deep breath. Hold it. Let it out slowly. And in this state of relaxation, we are at peace with ourselves. I am at peace with myself. Let us affirm that together. I am at peace with myself. Let that peace just sink in. Take a deep breath. Let it out slowly. And in this state of peace and relaxation, our minds are open, receptive, and ready to learn. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. Let us affirm that together. My mind is open, receptive, and ready to learn. So it is. Today, we are dealing with an interesting topic, a very interesting topic. And let me make sure that everyone can hear us this morning. Very good. Everyone can hear us. Thank you so much. If you can hear us on Facebook and you can hear us on Instagram, just raise your hand and say, "I can hear." Thank you so much. As we move along today, wave your hands if you can hear. I see you. Okay, good. All right, as we move along today, our message, this idea of coming out of a pandemic, there are really four topics, four areas we're going to consider. Number one, to realize that even this will pass away. That no matter how bad, how challenging a pandemic may seem to be, that even this will pass away. All right, well, I'm just not going to, interesting. Even this will pass away. Number two, to be still and know as a technique to transform yourself, as a technique to transform all that you need to do and be to get through this. Number three, to recognize that we already have everything we need to get everything we want. And then finally, number four, to keep going and growing. So let us look at this. When we look back over these last 2 years, these have been some interesting times, okay? Many people have lost their jobs, lost their savings, even lost their homes and family members and friends and acquaintances. This pandemic has introduced a level of uncertainty in our lives that many of us had never experienced before. It has tested our faith. It has tested our ability to be, do, and have that we have been seeking and working for the last years. So when we look at where we are right now, there are really two questions that come about, I think. Number one is, how do I get out of this pandemic? And a more subtle question is, why did this pandemic happen in the first place? Very interesting. How do we get out? And why did it happen in the first place? And the two are very, very intertwined. So when we look at step one on how do we get out of this pandemic, it's about how do we respond. When we look at coming out of the pandemic, there are two aspects of the pandemic. There's the external aspect, and that's what you see and you hear on the news, in the newspapers, what the politicians and everybody are talking about. And then there's the internal aspect, which is your perception of it and how you respond to it. And it is these two things that coexist, but the one that's important to you is how you respond to it, because then you're in control. So when we look, there's a spiritual principle, and it says, to everything, there's a season and a time for every purpose under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. And so when we look at this, we're in a cycle. This universe, life, moves along in cycles. And so this is not the first pandemic. Pandemics have come and gone through history. From ancient Roman times, there were pandemics in ancient Rome. In the 14th century, the bubonic plague literally killed a third of all the people in Europe. In 1918, the Spanish flu lasted for 2 years and killed nearly 50 million people throughout the planet, a worldwide pandemic. And now we look at where we are right now with this pandemic. And to know that even this will pass away, the spiritual principle that everything has a season, it gives us hope. Hope for a better day. And hope is critical. There's an Arabian proverb, and it says, he who has health has hope. He who has hope has everything. See, once you have hope, then you can have faith. Think about this. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So you have to have hope first. You have to know that something better is coming. You have to know that after the darkest night, there's going to be a day, that the sun always rises. And so faith is the substance of things hoped for. As long as you have that hope in your mind, in your heart, and it's the substance of things unseen. And so hope may not be substantiated by what you see around you. There's no evidence of this new world, these things that are going to come in and change and uplift you. But faith is saying, believe that it will be there, and it will be there. You know, the essence of faith is creating the vibration within you based on the hope for tomorrow. and the vibration that you create within you. We talk often about the fact that we live in a harmonic universe. And so we live our life from within out. The law of attraction says whatever you want to bring into your life experience, vibrate it. And so if you desire wealth, then vibrate wealth in your being, in your consciousness. You become attractive and you attract all the things into your space that you need. And so when we look at the universe and say, even this will pass away, it passes away, a part of it is the fact that we have the ability to create a vibration that can move us through the apparent reality. So when we recognize that even this will pass away, that's the second question of why did the pandemic come about in the first place is an interesting one. And one of the things we learn is everything has a season, but there is a reason for the season. So perhaps this pandemic that we're experiencing right now is a forerunner of greater things, of greater challenges, of greater pandemics, of greater circumstances. There was a movie, San Andreas, and it was talking about, the San Andreas fault out in California on the West Coast. And the movie opens that this fellow had invented a machine that could predict earthquakes, and he checked it out and they found an earthquake, and they had one near Las Vegas, and it was like a 6 or 7.5. And, like, oh man, this is terrible. But then he realized that this was just a forerunner of what was getting ready to happen in California, where there was like a 9 earthquake on the Richter scale. And so perhaps this pandemic that's taking place right now has a purpose to prepare us for the future. When we look at the climate, when we look at all the things that are happening to the planet in general, global warming and all of the things that are transpiring on the planet, things that we don't necessarily have direct control over, then it may be that this is all about preparing us to point out the weaknesses in our healthcare system. To look at the fact that there's great weakness, there's great equality in a healthcare system that's been controlled by money and profits. Think about this. If the government had not stepped in so that the vaccine and all of the things that could be done, if we had to rely totally on the healthcare system, this would have been a tragedy. Maybe this pandemic is to point out that after years of greed, that our labor market, where people have been pushed and pushed, higher productivity for the same wages. When we really look back, I saw a study that said executive salaries had increased over 300 times over the last 25 or 30 years. Meanwhile, wages for the average worker have only gone up a few percentage. They've barely kept up with inflation. I remember when Lee Iacocca was president, I think, of Chrysler, and he made $1 million a year, and that was a big deal. Now, $1 million a year is nothing. You look at your healthcare systems, the average CEO of a healthcare organization makes about $9 million a year. You have people who make $40 million a year, $50 million a year. So you have to say, man, what's going on? So maybe this pandemic, and you see what's happening in the labor market, maybe this has the purpose of pointing out some great inequities in our system. Maybe it's even to let us know that our government and our people may be disconnected, where we have disputes over some common sense things. So everything has a season, and there's a reason for every season. This whole experience might be a wake-up call. And you notice it's a worldwide experience. It's not just an American. It's a wake-up call to the whole world that we need to change, that we need to treat each other with respect. Every religion has a principle of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We look at the world right now, and that's probably the rule is that he who has the gold rules. So maybe all of this pandemic is just to make everybody, it's like a wake-up call. You look back on Paul and Silas. Paul and Silas, when in prison, And then a great earthquake came to fling the doors of the prison out so that they could be free. Maybe this pandemic experience is that shaking of the earth to open up the minds of all of us so that we can understand that there must be a change. Step 2, be still and know. When we see the bigness of this experience, this pandemic experience, there's a great spiritual principle, and it says, be still and know that I am God. And what it's really saying, be still and know that there's a greater force, that there's a greater source. You know, many of us say it's not about who you are, it's whose you are. When we talk about harmonic relationships, when we're in this period of challenge, one of the results of the pandemic is that many of us have been in forced isolation. We have been compelled to see ourselves, to meet ourselves, to introduce ourselves to ourselves. And so in this period of isolation, it has really given us a chance to see what is really important, to ask those kind of questions. Is this all there is? What do I need to do to get through this? When we say be still and know, that's a harmonic relationship. You know, there are 4 harmonic relationships. And the first harmonic relationship is the harmonic relationship between self and God, self and the Creator. And so when we are alone with ourselves, it gives us an opportunity now to reconnect, to start to recognize that it's not so much about who we are, it's about whose we are, that we are created for a purpose, that there's a reason that we're on this planet. It's not just happenstance. And that when we connect with our source, that harmonic relationship of the first order, then we can see a bigger picture. We can see a more meaningful picture. One of the interesting things, you know, with this pandemic is all of our book sales up. I know our book sales have been up, and I mean like up tremendously. And so you have to say, well, what is it? And I think what it is when people are still, when they be still and know, they start to question. They start to look for 2 things: meaning and significance. Everybody wants to understand who they are and what it's all about. Everybody wants to be significant, to be important. Dr. King said, if you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper on the planet. That's significance. And so this idea of be still and know is now to start to look at those principles that can guide us. The scripture says, seek first the kingdom, seek first the consciousness. So look at things like the first law of success. It says, as a mind thinketh, so in its heart, so is it. Scripture says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But there are a lot of women in the world. It's a mind, whatever kind of mind it is. And so this is saying that our lives begin in our thoughts. So whatever's going on outside around us, this pandemic and all this, it has validity, it has meaning. But for us, our thoughts are the guide. We look at like the second law of success: be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind. You don't have to stay stuck in whatever it is right now. You don't have to stay stuck where you are right now. In other words, whatever is going on, you have the capacity to transform your thinking, to change your thinking, to handle whatever's going on the outside. And so what happens inside, you have control over. You have control over your thoughts, over your emotions, over your habits, over your relationships. And so this idea of be still and know is to now, it's like we have a GPS. And in the quietness of our consciousness, we say, is this all there is? There's got to be more. Spirit says, seek and you shall find. Knock and it shall be opened. Ask and it shall be answered. This pandemic has put us in a position of seeking meaning to our lives, seeking significance of our lives. The third key is to recognize that we already have everything we need to get everything we want. Hello. We already have everything we need to get everything we want. One of the great scriptures says, or one of the great principles says that, think about this, the grass of the field which exists today and tomorrow is cast into the oven. Okay? The Creator takes care of them, so why wouldn't the Creator take care of you? Why should you worry about what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, what you're going to drink? You don't have to worry about that. That because you were created by an all-powerful Father, an all-powerful source, and you were created for a purpose, that if you vibrate and get in the right vibration, the right harmonic, then all these things will be added unto you. It says, seek first the kingdom, seek first the consciousness. So when we look at our condition within this pandemic, we don't look outside and see what's going on. We look inside and say, how do I want it to be? How do I want to move my life from where it is to where we want it to be, so that we can then create the life where we can live our gifts, create the life where that we were destined to experience. There is no obstacle that we cannot overcome. Think back on David and Goliath. You know, and when we look at some of the allegories, some of the parables, that the idea is not so much it's the principle involved. David, a young man with no skills, no military training, goes up against the giant, the person that has all the armor, all the technique, and he wins. David kills the giant. So what is it saying? Spiritually, this is saying that no matter what the obstacle, we have the ability to confront it and overcome it. We already have everything we need to get everything we want. When David was confronted with Goliath, he didn't run to get a crash course in giant killing. He looked around and metaphysically look around and says, look at what you believe in. Look at the ground as your beliefs. Look at the solid beliefs on which you stand, your values. And then he looked around for a rock, and a rock is symbolic of knowledge, profound knowledge. Knowledge with total conviction and belief. And then he took action. You know, he could have the rock and he could stand there on the ground, but the spiritual principle says you got to do something. So he had to get that slingshot and throw that rock. We right now, as we confront the Goliath that is this pandemic, we have the capacity to look at our own understanding by going into the corner, by looking into the corner and recognizing our connectedness with our source now. We have the capacity now to make it work, to get past this. We were created complete. We were created with everything we need to confront every Goliath in our lives. So when we look within, we understand that we already have everything we need. That gives us and supports the faith that we can get through this victoriously. Finally, step 4. Keep growing and growing. You see, there's no such thing as failure. The only failure is the failure that you accept and that you define as failure. 2 things happen in life. You either win or you get a lesson. So sometimes the losses, the things that did not work out the way we wanted them to work out, are more valuable than our victories, because we can learn a lot more from our losses sometimes than our victory. We become much more attentive when things don't work than when things do work. Sometimes our ego just takes over and we just think we're the one. We're the cat's meow. We made it happen. You know? But really and truly, we grow through the challenges that happen to us. So as we come out of this pandemic, let us look at each day as an opportunity for growth. Each day is an opportunity for sharing and being alive. Spiritual principle says that with God, all things are possible. And what we're saying is, with the proper identity to your source, with the knowingness of who you really are and why you're really here on this planet, You have the capacity now to connect up with your source and now get through and get past anything. So no matter how challenging the situation may be, we have the power to grow through it. You know, if we don't grow through it, we'll go through it again and again. You notice even with the pandemic, you see there starts and stops. It goes, it slows, it goes, it slows. So what's happening? Because we have to learn the lesson of what we have to do to get through this. Some people are saying A and other people are saying B until everybody can sing from the same hymnal. It's going to be a challenge. Until we grow through this situation, we will continue to go through it again and again. And growing through it means that we learn from it. Be not conformed to this world, but be you transformed by the renewing of your mind. That we think a new thought. That we start to put new thoughts into our mind. We start to look at the world from the point of view of we have the capacity to create our own world regardless of the pandemic. That if we recognize our source and we do those things that we know from within, what makes sense to us, we can get through this. That when we look at the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and you follow that, and you recognize your oneness with God, we have everything we need to get through this. We can learn from these experiences. So, no matter how great the obstacle, we have the ability to pass through it. What is the difference between a piece of coal and a diamond? If you look at the chemical composition, they're basically the same. The difference is the diamond has been put under pressure. And so right now, this pandemic is like, in a sense, we're being put under pressure. But this pressure says we can go through it and we can grow through it. So when we're put under the pressure of this external pandemic, it helps us create within us the ability to become a diamond inside. To overcome, to become the David who's able to slay the dragon, slay the giant. It can help us overcome all the external things, knowing who we are and whose we are. So let us just sort of summarize where we've been today. That we want to get through this pandemic. We want to move through our own promised land. And our promised land is that we desire. All of us have goals. All of us have visions. And when we focus on our goals and focus on our visions, this can take us through this. And really and truly, this is an illusion. Okay? That when we focus on our visions, this is just an opportunity for greatness. Sometimes we may look at this whole situation as a great wall. And if we see that wall as an obstacle that we can't go through, we're done. But if we see that wall as something to climb and we figure out a way to find a ladder and climb up a pole and throw a rope on it, we get to the top of it, we can see further. So realize that even this will pass away. We will have our promised land and get to the lives that we desire to live. The land, you know, the lives that have been more clarified. One of the things about this pandemic is that it has clarified in us a lot of what we really want. You know, when a lot of these, Marilyn Monroe had a great quote, you know, really good. Marilyn Monroe said something interesting. She said, I believe that everything happens for a reason. People change so that you can learn to let go. Things go wrong so that you appreciate them when they're right. You believe lies so that you eventually learn to trust no one but yourself. And sometimes good things fall apart so that better things can fall together. I'm going to repeat that last line. Sometimes good things fall apart so that better things can come together. So let's summarize. Number one, we come through this pandemic and create our promised land by realizing that even this will pass away. This is only for a season. and that there's a reason for that season, and that reason is growth, our own growth, the world's growth, to pay attention to prepare us for the next elevation. 2, to be still and know, to disconnect from the negativity of the world, to connect with our oneness with our source, with God, with our creator, knowing that once we are harmonic with that, our source, then we can attract all that we need to live our purpose. Number 3, to realize that we already have everything we need to get everything we want, that we were created complete, that we were created with all the tools necessary to achieve success. All of these ideas of lack and limitation are really learned behaviors taught by people who don't know. And they may not even be intentional. It's just that the world can only share what the vibration is. Sometimes the world is like a big bed of weeds, and you're a beautiful flower. Well, you have to survive. You have to pull up those weeds, and you have to enhance and nourish your flower. But you know that if you do it, you'll blossom. You are the David who can slay any Goliath that comes in your space. And 4th, to keep growing and growing. Life is an evolutionary experience, that we grow through things to get better. Life is like an infinitely tall skyscraper, and we're on the elevator. And each time we have a challenge, each floor is a challenge, is an obstacle. And each time we raise our elevator, raise the consciousness in that skyscraper of existence, we rise a little higher. And as we rise higher, we can see more. And when we can see more, we can be more. Face each day with a commitment to get better. Say every day and every way, I'm getting better and better. Recognize every challenge as an opportunity for growth. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't necessary to help you move on to the next level. Always know that the Creator never puts more in our space than we can handle. And that through our connection with our source, God, the Creator, all things are possible. So that we can get through this pandemic and we can be whatever we want to be. That we can do whatever we want to do. And we can have whatever we want to have, always knowing that the best is yet to come. So it is. Thank you so much for those who joined us today on Instagram, on Facebook. I hope this message takes you to a whole nother level to give you the tools you need to get where you want to go. Be sure to share it with at least 3 other people. Listen to it over and over and help it. Let it help you transform you into the person you really want to be. I'd love to hear from you. Bring you up to date on some of the great things we're doing. Be sure to write me. Send me an email, herbert@herbertharris.com. Tell me how these messages have been helping you transform your lives from what it is to what you want it to be. Always knowing that the best is yet to come. So it is. Those of you on our success team, stay on board and we'll have our discussion on Zoom.